Tell us about Rainier Athletes, and thanks for coming on the show.
Yeah. I can kind of start from the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
So I grew up in the Bellevue community,
Okay.
and I went to Sammamish High School, which is in Bellevue, and yet it doesn't get stereotyped like Bellevue typically gets stereotyped.
Yeah.
So Bellevue gets stereotyped as Neiman Marcus and Bellevue Wolverines and state
Uh-huh.
champion and Bill Gates and a bunch of money, whereas Sammamish was a Title I high school, right? Meaning a certain percentage of students there qualified for free and reduced lunch.
Really?
So there's a lot of poverty in that school, but there's also
Even though the houses are like $2-3 million.
Well, this is not Sammamish Plateau. This is Sammamish in Bellevue.
Okay.
So Sammamish in Bellevue, which is interesting because it's Lake Sammamish goes all the way around. So there's
Still,
Sammamish Plateau.
Those are $5 million
And
homes.
yeah, those are $5 million homes, and then you come across, and on the lake is still $5 million homes. But you get up into the Lake Hills area.
Yeah.
That's where Sammamish is.
Okay.
And so it was just my experience was amazing, right?
Mm-hmm.
I fit the mold as being a white guy that speaks English, that has a family that has resources,
Mm-hmm.
and yet my friends had a very different experience growing up.
Right.
And I didn't have to think anything about it when I was in school because I realized this later, because I was working into a system that was built for people that looked like me, that sounded
Mm-hmm.
like me.
Yeah.
So when they're like, "Oh yeah, white boy," I'm like, "Yeah, the white boy," but I didn't
Yeah.
like have any feelings around it because
Right. It was just kind of like a slang.
There's a lot of white
Yeah.
people, and they all
Yeah.
have all these resources. So, anyways, I ended up graduating, and I went to school in California that was a sea of whiteness, very different than
Mhm.
my high school. And even though I fit the mold there as well, it was a culture shock for me because I didn't see people that looked like my friends.
Where'd you go to college?
Claremont County
yeah,
College in
yeah.
Southern California. So great school. I played
Mhm.
football there. I had a bunch of friends walking in the first day, and learned how to navigate that environment as well. But when I graduated, I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do. And typically at Claremont, it's like investment banking
Mm-hmm.
or management consulting, or maybe you're going to go be a doctor. But there's it's pretty set. Like, you're going to go and do this.
Right.
I just was like, I don't want to do that, I don't think. And so I reached out to some of my friends from Sammamish who I'd lost touch with.
Mm-hmm.
I said, like, what's up with you guys? What are you guys dreaming about? I got this. I ended up getting the management consulting job, and I was not very excited about it.
Yeah. Which company?
It's called Gallagher.
Gallagher. Okay.
Yeah,
I might have heard of it.
yeah. It's more human capital consulting.
Okay.
So
like hiring.
like benefits and promotions
Uh-huh.
and org charts and how are we motivating people. It sounds cool on paper, but then I got there. I was like, yeah, this isn't for me. It's
Yeah.
for some people, but it's not for me.
It's like that movie Air Up There.
Yeah,
You've seen
I
that?
know. Air Up There.
Or the George
that the-
Clooney movie
No, I don't think
where
so.
he's like a
I told you, me and pop culture. I mean, you can keep explaining it. Eventually,
Yeah,
maybe
so
I'll
you're
get it.
like,
I was like, is that the airplane movie? I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
I did see George Clooney though recently.
Yeah.
At the showing for The Boys in the Boat.
Okay.
We got to bring some kids out to that showing, which is really
nice.
cool. And then all of a sudden, George Clooney walks out on stage, and because he's the guy that directed
Yeah.
The Boys in the Boat.
That was a good movie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I liked it. Anyways, jumping back onto the Rainier Athletes. So, anyways, I reached out to some of my friends. What are you guys doing? They're like, bro, like we're trying to survive.
Mm.
I'm like, wait, what? They're like, we're trying to put food on the table for our family. We're not thinking about dreaming about the future. We're just trying to get to tomorrow.
And how old were they?
At that time,
Yeah.
this is like a year outside of college.
And just a year out of college.
So I'm a year out of college, and I'm just not liking my job
Mm-hmm.
after Claremont and trying to figure out what I wanted to do.
Whereas your friends are looking for a job.
My friends are looking for
Wish-
a job,
wish
but
they had
they're
a
just
job.
surviving. They're not
Yeah.
necessarily they're in the back of their brain, right? The emotional survive response. What do I
Mhm.
do? And I'm sitting there in my front of my brain thinking big picture, like I'm dreaming and I want
Yeah.
to thrive. And I had some of my friends down in Silicon Valley playing foosball, and that seems kind of cool. Or
Right.
maybe I want to go be a teacher because I really like working with youth. And I had some experiences
Mhm.
that I can share about that kind of led me to the youth. But it started with this conversation about my friends telling me that they were just trying to survive. And I'm
Mhm.
sitting here with a very different mindset. So I became obsessed with why. Why am I thinking like this about dreaming big? And why are my friends surviving
Right.
and don't even have the ability to access the front of their brain? Because when you're in the survival mode, it's just about surviving,
Mm-hmm.
right? You don't have the capacity to come up to the front of your brain. And I started to reflect a little bit, and I realized that a lot of my friends were in classes that I wasn't in. I was in some of these like AP classes or honors classes. My friends weren't in those classes.
Mm-hmm.
And well, I played all these sports growing up, and some of my friends played sports, but maybe they tried out for a season, but they didn't try out until high school because before high school you had to pay to play. And a lot of my friends didn't have the resources to be able to access sports before high school. So when they got to high school, they either didn't have the skills or the resilience or another something in their arsenal to be able to continue to play sports. So that didn't work out for them either.
Right.
So I became obsessed with this idea of like maybe it was because I had mentors and coaches in my life who believed in me all the way from the day I could walk. You know, I was involved in activities where I had people who picked me up when I fell down and said, let's go. And so that's where I was able to access my front of my brain. Like, oh man, there's a whole future in front of me.
Yeah, because it was laid out in front of you.
Yeah, it was laid out in front of me.
This is possible.
And then that in that moment, that's what I realized. I've later realized, learned, and unlearned a lot of things about just, you know, being a white English-speaking male in a society that was built for white English-speaking males, and the inequities that exist in our systems because of some of the way someone looks like, right? So that learning didn't really come until later. At that point in time, when I was really talking to my friends, it just hit me that there was an access gap. And so Rainier Athletes was kind of born after that conversation. And I said, well, what if we could start something that gave a lot of my friends were from earlier generation, like or present generation, the same opportunities that I had growing up, to have mentors and coaches and be involved in activities and something outside of school and education that you can't necessarily learn in the classroom. And so the idea for Rainier Athletes was born.
Nice. And how long have you been running it?
So that conversation with friends was in 2012.
Okay.
And Rainier Athletes kicked off its first season in the spring of 2013. We selected 3 students from Lake Hills Elementary, which is right near Sammamish. It's walking distance from Sammamish High School. And 70% of the students there qualify for free or reduced lunch at the time when we first started. So just for reference sake, we're in Bellevue. You got Lake Hills Elementary. 70% of students qualify for free and reduced lunch. Less than 5 miles away, you got Medina Elementary, where less than 1% of students qualified for free and reduced lunch. Medina flows into Bellevue High School. Lake Hills flows into Sammamish High School, where I ended up going. So just same city, but very different stories. And
only 5 miles apart.
And only 5 miles apart. A lot of people don't realize that there's another side of 405. They consider Bellevue, West Bellevue, but there's another side of Bellevue. And that's where I grew up. So anyways, those 3 kids at Lake, we got 3 kids signed up for Little League Baseball at the time. 3 kids that have never been involved in a team sport starting in 5th grade. And I worked with those 5th grade teachers to develop, at the time, was called the point system. It's since changed a little bit, but the mentality at that point was students that are kind of put into the system are going to have to learn how to navigate that system. And the teachers have some of that knowledge on how to navigate that system. So if those students could do those things that teachers said are important in order to navigate that system, they would be able to access their baseball game. Then Rainier Athlete would provide the resources for them to be able to access. So those things are like registration support and translation support and carpool support and sports gear and team pictures and team snacks, anything that was a barrier for that student equitably participating in that sport.
Yeah, because they may not have a parent that's able to pick them up from school, take them to practice, pick them up from practice because they're working. Exactly.
And I think I appreciate that you say that, because they're working. A lot of folks think like, oh, because someone might be living in poverty, their parents don't care, when in reality, these parents care more than sometimes
they just
a lot of wealthy parents risk their lives to stay in the city to have resources to give their kids a better life than they had. So that's how it started. And we got 3 kids signed up for baseball. We partnered with the league, we partnered with the school, we partnered with the student, we partnered with the family. But a few weeks, and this is kind of part of the evolution story, a few weeks into starting Rainier Athletes with these 3 students that are playing baseball, the teacher reached out to me for one of the students and said, hey, Brian didn't meet his goals in the classroom and shouldn't be able to play in his baseball game. So I said, okay, well, let me connect with mom and let me connect with coach to make sure they're good with it. And I connected with coach, and coach is like, he's my 3 hitter. It turns out this kid's good, but I get it. I'll bench him. School is really important. So I'm good with that. Mom, on the other hand, was like, man, this is hard because this is the first time that I as a person of color am going out into the community and seeing people that don't look like me, but they're actually befriending me, and I'm building community because I think they think that Brian is good at baseball. So it's going to be hard for me to be there and not have him play.
Right.
But I think this is a good thing. Jesse, the only thing I ask you is that you go and tell Brian that he can't play.
And why?
Yeah, and why? And go just have a conversation with him. So I'm wearing my suit and tie because at the time that's what I had to wear. And I'm going over to the school to meet with this 10-year-old to tell him he can't play in his baseball game. And I think I got this, I got this down. And I tell the kid, hey, what happened? Why didn't you reach your goals in the class? And this kid's number one goal was to advocate for himself. He was a kid that spoke Spanish at home, spoke English pretty well, but showed up as a really quiet kid. And if his teacher decided that the skill of navigation was going to be raising his hand, if he needed to raise his hand from 5th grade through high school when he had a question or he was not going to survive in school. And that week he didn't advocate for himself. So why didn't you advocate for yourself? Let's talk about it for a second. And by the way, you don't get to play in your baseball game.
Wow.
And this 10-year-old looks at me in the eyes, he's like sad and he's mad. And he's like, what am I going to tell my team? Because you're saying I still got to go to the game, but I can't play. I was like, well, let's role play for a second. So he gets the courage to tell me that he's a Rainier athlete. He didn't meet his goals in the classroom this week, but next week he's going to step it up and he's going to be back. And then this 10-year-old kid takes a step back and he looks up at me and he goes, you know what, man? This is going to work. And that's where the idea for Rainier Athletes hit me. It was like when he said this is going to work, he meant when I connected with his teacher and his mom and his coach and his team, it was the mentor catalyzing communication between all of these supporters, people that love this kid. So no matter where that kid is in the classroom, at home, on the field, in their community, they're going to be seen and heard and held accountable and loved and had that sense of belonging. So that's where Rainier Athletes slowly started to take shape. It wasn't a sports scholarship program. It was a mentorship program where mentors are connecting with students and families and coaches and community and wrapping around a young person and meeting with them every week, every year. So we followed that first cohort from 4th grade to 5th grade into middle school and into high school. And now 10 years later, those students are in their 3rd year of their next step. And we have relationships with all of these students. And
they're in college right now.
Yeah, college or apprenticeships or professional certificate programs. We're not a college prep program, but kids that are able to go into college, we're going to support them in that process. But the main thing is this idea that we're going to identify mentors from the community, pair them with a young person, get to know that young person on a deeper level by getting to know their family and their history and their culture, help them develop a sense of pride for their identity and their culture while helping them navigate the systems and culture that they've been placed into.
Wow.
And then we stick with that same student every week, every year from 4th grade through high school and beyond. And that's how we roll.
That's powerful.
That's how it works. Yeah.
So you started with those 3 students, right? Did those 3 continue on to the program?
Yep. All the way through.
So how many students do you have now?
So now we'll have 160 by the end of this year.
Wow. And how do you decide which students get to participate?
So we have a data sharing agreement with the Bellevue School District, and we identify students who face barriers to access. So a big barrier is financial resources. So 100% of our students qualify for free or reduced lunch, which is kind of the lowest levels of poverty. Students that are experiencing poverty. That's kind of the one big check mark. Another one is do they really believe in the power of mentorship and the power of being part of a team and the power of education?
Are they coachable?
So we interview students, we interview families. Our families bought into this process, and if so, we say, hey, this isn't just a one year thing. Once you commit to this, we're sticking with you all the way through high school and beyond. And so we work with teachers and counselors and principals all the way up to the superintendent of the district to identify students who would be best fit for the Rainier Athletes. And then we go out in the community and we identify mentors who will be best matched with each student.
So do you make a call out to the community, or how's that process?
Yeah, so we over the years it's changed. I mean, there's just so much growth with Rainier Athletes over the years. The first 4 years we had no staff, right? It was all volunteer. I had the consulting job and was doing it volunteer. And I'd go ask my friend Tony if he wanted to mentor, and Tony would ask his friend, and we ended up getting some more volunteer mentors. And I ended up getting another job in the outdoor industry and traveling around the Western U.S. and loving it. but Rainier Athletes was starting to grow.
Yeah.
And then in 2016, we got a grant from a foundation that allowed me enough runway to quit my corporate job, pay my bills, and try to make this thing work as its own independent nonprofit. And so we didn't really have a great system. It was word of mouth. And now today we have partnerships with Meta and Amazon and Costco, and they not only support us financially, but we'll go into Amazon and say, hey, do you guys have an employee resource group with people that speak Spanish? Oh yeah, we have Latinos at Amazon. It's a huge employee resource group, and their whole goal is around giving back to the community. So they'll set us up and we'll do a lunch and learn with this group. Turns out some of these workers at Amazon went to Lake Hills Elementary.
Wow.
And they've made it through the system, and now they want to come back and support people that sound like them and look like them, who have similar lived experience.
Yeah.
And so that's one mechanism that we'll find mentors. But
so it's not just athletes, it's actually introducing your students to other opportunities out there.
Oh, 100%.
Being a software developer, being a manager, or whatnot.
Yeah, it's about the mentoring. So sports is the vehicle in which we engage in a deeper conversation with a young person and all those core supporters I was talking about, teacher, coach, mentor. We've actually expanded our offerings to beyond sports, into engineering, into the arts. So we have music programs and theater programs, just to get kids to ignite their passion outside of school. Yeah. Again, it's an education outside the classroom, and just having that purpose, and then having that mentor you can talk with about that purpose, to really get to know not necessarily what you do, but who you are. Right. Kind of flipping that paradigm a little bit. The importance of the core of that human versus the act, the job that they have. Yeah. If that makes sense. But yeah, so our mentors come from all walks of life, and so do our students. We do have a student who happens to be one of the best soccer players in the state. Right? Really? He plays for the Sounders Academy and is an incredible athlete. And I'll also admit we have a student that's the worst soccer player in the state. But they both benefit from being part of a team, and they both benefit from having a mentor that communicates with them and their family and gets to know them.
Are the Sounders pretty involved with your program as well?
The Sounders organization, they've given us a lot of support over the years. Christian Roldan and Jordan Morris are both kind of two prolific Sounder players that have come to our events and met with our kids and supported us. Actually, this summer, Christian came out with his brother Alex and offered a golfing auction item for us. So they came out, Christian and Alex, and golfed with a couple of our supporters at Overlake Country Club. And I hate to admit this on air, but Christian shot his best score of his life, and has been bragging about it ever since. It's like, how do you go from being this world champion soccer player to being an incredible golfer at the same time? So these guys are,
dedication on the off season, right?
Those guys are awesome. And then others, we've developed relationships with all the professional sports teams, from the Storm and the Rain to the Seahawks have been big supporters. Last year we were the Mariners Impact Grant recipients. We got a $25,000 grant from the Mariners, and they came and did a check presentation at our event.
Oh, nice. So do you have like an annual gala or something? Or fundraiser?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, it's coming up. I hope to see you there.
Yeah.
April 27th.
April 27th? Yeah. We'll be there.
Let's go. Man, it's been fun. I mean, the team's grown a lot too. So my role from that individual mentor has just transformed over these last 10 years.
I think it's amazing that you had this idea, right? You're in there, you're in a cush management consulting job, making six figures, right?
Making good money,
Making good money, and you're like, you know what, this is not it. And I think it's amazing that you found that out early on, as opposed to later, because being a young entrepreneur, you have less to lose when you're starting at that point.
100%.
Right? Then if you waited 10, 20 years, you have kids, whatnot.
I got so lucky in so many ways. I mean, there's some skills that I think I had over time, but a lot of it that does have to do with situations, right? I mean, one, being young and not having a lot to lose, right? If I try and I fail, it's not like I have kids at home. But also just having a network built in with my parents to start a nonprofit in Bellevue, where there's incredible amounts of resource and incredible amounts of need. So the stars, I think, really aligned. And then I've just been able to work with such amazing people. You saw some of our team before we walked in here, but Raquel, who you just met, also went to Sammamish
Okay.
and also had a family that didn't have resources and had to navigate the system and be the point person for her family.
Mm-hmm.
And she was one of the, she's a first generation college student and graduated and came back and she wanted to serve community. So she inspires me every single day. So even though I've been doing this for 10 years, I feel like I'm still at the beginning of my learning journey. And we always talk about unlearning because there's so much that I learned that now I needed to unlearn to really be able to open my heart and my mind and see things differently.
Wow. And what do your parents do?
Well, they say they're retired, but they're not quite there yet. My dad's.
I don't think people retire.
Yeah, they're both busy, but they're definitely taking it. This is the first year. My dad's one of the hardest workers I've ever seen in my life, and he's a physician. So he went to college. He went to college forever. It feels like to be a doctor. It's funny. His whole he's a family. We have a family of doctors. So he has two brothers. They both were doctors as well, and his father was a doctor. So they all went to Ivy League schools, and my dad failed out of his first year of college, and then ended up getting into the University of Washington, doing really, really well.
Yeah.
And he just has this way with people, right? He's smart, but he's not doctor smart.
Yeah.
He can read a book, but he much rather read a mystery, shoot 'em up,
that probably helps him.
Drug, sex, and violence type of book than reading an academic journal. I don't think he's ever read an academic journal after he passed medical school. But he knows people. And so when people walked into his office, no matter who they were, whether they were some reputable CEO or a person that's, he's taking for free, or they're on, a level of insurance.
Yeah.
He just saw their human issues, right? And treated everybody like a human and got to know them on a deeper level. And those people really appreciated him. So I was telling you about that Sports Star of the Year event.
Yeah.
So it was really cool because Nate McMillan was there. He was the old Sonics coach.
Yep.
And he went up on stage and he did his thing and he was walking out. Him and I happened to walk out at the same time. And my dad, I knew, was really close to Nate's wife.
Okay.
At one point in time, my dad was Nate's wife's doctor. And so I walked. I knew that I didn't know if Nate would know my dad. But I'm like, we're right here, and I can see a wave of people coming to talk to Nate. So I was like, I'm just gonna say what's up. I'm like, hey Nate, you probably don't know me, but my dad, is close with your wife Michelle. It's Dr. Franklin, and he stops.
Yeah.
He's like, can I get a picture with you? I gotta send it to my wife.
Yeah.
She loves your dad. I mean, she travels across the country still to go to his practice because she loves your dad so much. Because he left Seattle, ended up, I think he's in the East Coast now.
Yeah.
But it's just one of those stories which happens all the time. My dad, being a doctor, just built such a strong community because of relationships, because he just truly took the time to get to know people.
Yeah. I think that's really key, because my experience with doctors has always been like, you're just a number.
Yeah.
Right?
100%.
They limit you to X amount of minutes. It's like, what do you need? What's your problem? Oh, based on your chart, like, you didn't even read the whole chart.
Yeah. Yeah, my dad's always late because it's always taking too much time with each patient. So it's starting late with the next one and going over again and again and again. So he was just a hard worker. He was always left before, he tried to take us to school, or we took the bus, but he'd always kind of kiss us goodbye in the morning, and then we wouldn't see him until the sun went down. Wow. And he'd come in and still have energy to wrestle us as kids.
Yeah.
And, be a good dad, be involved in our sports, and he'd leave early from work to coach sports, and then he'd be up late doing his charts.
Wow. Yeah, love the family.
Yeah, he's a huge inspiration for why Rainier Athletes exists as well.
Yeah. Now, speaking of the human side of things, right? How do you see AI playing a part in how you run your company?
Yeah, it's such a hot topic right now. Huh?
Yeah, it's hot. Because you're serving 160 students right now, but I can only imagine there's a huge demand for that in other communities.
Oh, even here. There's
right? And just here, because you're only serving we have a small portion here.
So 1 out of 4 students in Bellevue School Districts qualify for free and reduced lunch right now.
Yeah.
It's the highest it's been in over a decade. So that's about 4,000 students. Those 4,000 students that would qualify for Rainier Athlete Services just in our city. Wow. We could obviously take that and expand. But no, we're human-centered. I think there's elements of AI that can help us do some of the manual process, like data collection, and our mentors are writing reports, and AI might be able to come in and pull some red flags and reports that our staff might not have time to review every report that comes through. and help us make some data-centered decisions. But at the end of the day, we still, as humans, need to make those decisions and have those conversations. Microsoft is talking about AI tutors being the next thing. Every kid needs a tutor. Tutoring is like this hot topic. And I do believe there's some benefit to that. Really getting to know a young person and the learning style and being able to essentially teach them through using AI algorithms to be able to understand how they learn. But I've learned in my 10 years of doing this work that it's not that students can't learn a subject or need to learn in a different way. It's a lot of times it's the relationship that they have with their teacher that prevents them from being able to be open to learning. So if I don't respect you as a teacher, or you don't get to know me as a teacher.
Yeah, you close your doors.
You close your door. This is especially true for communities of color, where relationships are everything and relational equity is everything. So until a teacher really takes that time to not look at that student as a number, but really as a human being with a unique identity and a unique family and a unique past, that student just might be closed off to wanting to learn math or reading or whatever it is. And so when it comes to tutoring, I think the most effective tutors spend the first few appointments with that young person just getting to know them and building that relationship. Then a young person might be more open to learning. If not, I'm constantly just closed off. And those connections in my brain are not going to be open to the type of education that you're providing to me.
And do you think that's part of the problem with school right now? Because if there's so much demand for what you offer, why isn't the school providing that resources?
I mean, I could talk about this all day, but our education system is just antiquated. It's such a big system that's so slow to move and make big changes, and it's still operating like we're in the 1950s and 60s where everybody's going to be a factory worker. Right. So learn this and regurgitate this. Learn this, memorize it, and regurgitate this. But that's not how our economy actually works anymore. We need innovators and creative thinkers and leaders and people connectors, which, I mean, some teachers are incredible teachers and they realize that and they can come and meet their student where they're at. But the curriculum and the system itself is not necessarily promoting that type of learning.
Yeah, I know. I saw Princeton bringing back the SATs. What are your thoughts on that?
Big shout out and a huge thank you to Zeakin for making this happen. They have an amazing platform. Check out their website, zeakin.com, zeacon.com.
Yeah, I mean, I think the SATs have been proven to not actually have long-lasting implications of success.
So why would you say they bring it back?
Why did they bring it back? Oh, there's so much money in the SATs.
Really?
There's a whole economy around standardized testing.
So like all the test preps,
all
tutors.
The test prep, tutors, the test itself, and implementing that test.
And
was it College Board? I think that institutes. I think that owns the SAT. So Princeton reviews. They have their like Princeton books for the SAT preps.
So it's an industry that we're taking.
It's a total industry, yeah. I mean, there's something about learning how to study for a test that's important, but that doesn't have to. There's not one standardized way of learning. We're so unique as human beings. So there's not a standardized way to test a human being with that type of test. I think interviews I think go a long way, and essay writing, but also some schools and scholarships are getting creative and saying, you could write an essay or you could do a video interview, right? Because kids learn how to communicate in so many different ways. And so nowadays you can make money being being on YouTube or being on TikTok. You don't need to be able to write emails. You just need to be able to communicate and be able to bring people together. And it doesn't matter which medium that you used in order to do that. As long as you can do that, you can be successful.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting because I ran into my old MBA files.
Oh, yeah.
I'm like, I actually wrote this paper.
Yeah. Dad, do you remember any of that? Yeah. I wrote my thesis on some sort of, what was it? Real estate in Southern California and connecting that to, residential real estate to commercial real estate, something. I spent 100 hours on this paper, like 80-page paper,
and you're furthest away.
And I did
from
well
that
on it. I got an
industry.
A on this thesis. I don't remember. One, I don't do that anymore.
Yeah.
And two, I can't tell you what wrote about that at all.
Right.
All I remember is my thesis advisor not really caring about me.
Yeah.
I remember the relationship I had with my thesis advisor way
Right.
more than I remember doing the actual paper itself.
Wow.
I think the other points about AI, or bringing it back to AI, is that can be helpful in our industry too. Or some of those grant writing could be helpful, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you scan all of our grants that we've done so far and then be able to regurgitate the information, because that's what we do,
Mm-hmm.
right? We go, all right, we wrote so many grants already to be able to raise funds.
What's
for
your
what we do.
success rate on those?
Our success rate on grants is really high. I think because we don't have capacity to write a ton of grants.
Yeah.
Like it should be a lot lower.
Right.
Because we're writing more grants, but we don't have a team that's writing grants. I wrote grants the first 9 years of this thing,
Mm-hmm.
while also running a company, while also mentoring, while also doing the marketing, while also doing the HR. We've recently hired our first ever development director
Mm-hmm.
that's going to be supporting our grant writing, but she's also supporting this fundraiser that we have coming up and multiple other pieces. So a tool like AI can be helpful in at least getting us started.
Mm-hmm.
I like to say that our grant writing is a little unique because it has our unique voice, and I think AI is still at a level where it just sounds robotic.
Mm-hmm.
So as we've been hiring, we get so many cover letters, and we actually read cover letters, and you can just tell when something's been written by a robot.
Yeah.
I'm like, if you're not going to take the time to tell me who you are, and you're going to have a robot do it,
or at least
or send us a video.
paraphrase.
Send us a video.
Yeah,
If you want to do your cover letter in a video, that'd be great. I
Yeah.
love that. So, yeah,
Now-
I think there's pros and cons.
For the students that you're working with, have their grades improved because of the program? I mean, how's
It's hard to say, right? Because we start with them so early. So we've seen students. It's a wave, right?
Mhm.
It's like some students in 4th and 5th grade, maybe their reading and math levels are really low, and they get into middle school and they rise.
Mhm.
But then our students will experience a lot of trauma too. So something happens in their life, maybe their grades start to drop off a little bit.
right?
And what we talk about too is it's hard to measure this because not having a mentor in your life, maybe they drop off all the way and never come back.
Mhm.
But what a mentor can do is help to support a student in tapping into their resilience and saying, all right, my grades are going to drop, but now I can bounce back.
Yep.
And so we have a lot of seniors this year that will be the first in their families to ever go to college.
Wow.
And we have seniors from the last couple of years that are first families to pursue education, like 4-year colleges
Mhm.
after high school, after being in Rainier Athletes for a long time. I think what really defines success for me is seeing these students that are busy and navigating college for the first time coming back and actually wanting to volunteer their time to be mentors.
Wow.
So we have our first ever Rainier Athlete students that are now coming back and
Wow.
becoming mentors for younger students while navigating their next step after high school. And so that's community in action. When
That's awesome.
we kind of remember where we came from and want to contribute to the continuation of my success by bringing up the next generation of
I
leaders.
think that's huge because they've been through that process.
Yeah.
So any parent or kid that doubts what you're doing, these guys are your cheerleaders.
Oh yeah,
Right?
yeah, totally. I mean,
It's like,
I've learned to say what I need to say,
Yeah.
but at the end of the day, it's their voices that actually matter.
yeah.
That they're the real impact of our organization. It's not. It's not me at all. My team, the folks that have, like Raquel and George, who have had a really challenging childhood in so many ways and been able to navigate that system and come back, and now they're actually in this space doing this work where their skills could be used in another industry, making way more money.
Mhm.
But they decided to be in this nonprofit space, giving back to community and finding a lot of value in that
Yeah.
and placing value on that. That's where I see the biggest impact, for sure. But yeah, grades. Yes, grades have improved and grades have gone down and
Yeah.
grades have improved. But
You think pandemic?
pandemic was hard.
Yeah. How did you navigate that?
Uh,
Because I mean, a lot of the sports were gone.
yeah, we did some unique things. So we had.
And how did you create access to the computers that some of these kids needed?
So luckily we had the partnership with the Bellevue School District
Okay.
and T-Mobile allowed students to all have access to laptops. Because in high school, students had their laptops, but in middle school and elementary school, they need to access laptops.
Mm-hmm.
And so some public-private partnerships came together to provide access. Internet was a challenge, though.
Yeah.
So a lot of families didn't have internet. So we'd have families actually come to our office here,
Okay.
and they would work out of our WeWork
Mm-hmm.
and have access to
Wow.
the internet in their school and their classes. And it also is helpful because a lot of our families live in multi-generational households, and it's just wild at home.
Yeah.
Right? So trying to sit in class and pay attention with toddlers running around and people trying to cook and whatnot just was difficult. So being able to get out of that space and come to a quieter space, a better learning environment was helpful.
Yeah, I asked that question because in After School All-Star, I sit on the board of After School All-Stars.
Yeah, you mentioned that.
And we would attend some of the virtual sessions, and you see just like black screens, because some of these kids lived in a one bedroom or just like you said, multi-generational household where there's too much going on.
Yep.
And they're either embarrassed to put the screen on,
100%.
even though they were required.
Yep.
Or they just attendance was not there because there's no internet, no computer, right?
Yep.
So
yeah, it was so hard for everybody. Hard for the kids, hard for the teachers. Teachers don't learn that in teacher school. How do you get a bunch of 10-year-olds to focus or teenagers to focus?
Call them up to say, hey, log in.
Like what? So that was just really hard.
Tough, yeah.
From a sports standpoint, that was really hard too. A lot of these sports leagues couldn't operate. We did some creative things where we did virtual boot camps for just to get kids moving. So we had trainers from Ford Sports Performance come through.
Right down the street from us.
Yeah, put on a session for kids. We had a yoga teacher come on and do a yoga session for students, and that was one of the highlights of all of COVID for me because we're not seeing a lot of people, and I miss these kids. And once a week or twice a week, we'd jump on these calls, and they would actually be logging in, and they'd have their camera on, and you can yell at them and coach them and get excited, and then also like through that workout and after workout, we're all sitting there, we're stretching. It was an opportunity for either the facilitator of the workout or myself or another mentor to just talk about how everyone's feeling and own our own feelings as well. Because a lot of times adults or mentors feel like they can't be humans, that their feelings don't matter, but kids can read through that. So if we can be really open with our faults and our challenges as well, that helps build the relationship and make a lot of the students that were literally alone during COVID feel less alone. But also post-COVID as well, just being open and vulnerable makes a big difference.
Yeah. Isn't that interesting though? I mean, like with AI and everything, people still want to connect with people.
Yeah, I mean, hopefully there's some bigger reason behind that, right? It's like built into our biology.
It has to be.
You ever see Avatar? You've seen Avatar. I said I wasn't a pop culture guy, but Avatar, there's this, they're connected to each other and all animals and all nature. And like they take their braids and they attach it to their horse or their flying horse or pterodactyl, whatever it is. And that's how they connect with that animal. And now they're one and they're unified.
Right.
Yeah, you got to believe that in some way, shape, or form, like sitting here looking in your eyes and being connected is more than you and I can truly understand, but we can feel it and it has its impact. Yeah. Whether we can measure it or it shows up in our grades or shows up in our data, I think that's the power of faith, just believing in something that you can't see. It doesn't matter.
And you also feel the energy of the person.
Yeah,
right?
100%,
like, imagine that one kid that you had to tell to sit out the game.
Mm-hmm.
Imagine telling him that over Zoom or whatever.
Yeah.
Right? Or Microsoft Teams. And
or they just showing their ear, the camera, and you can't even see their eyes in the first place. Yeah, it doesn't work. And I just thought that AI just can't, I don't think it never develop that innate human ability. Again, there's benefits for it, but let's not overpromise what this technology can deliver, and then also forget the power of the human-centered approach, which is so important in everything that we do, in business, in relationships, in family life, in nonprofits, in school. Again, there are a lot of technologies that can support us in doing our jobs well. But there's also an element in the connection of human beings and authentic, intentional connections that just can't be emulated by technology.
That's true.
In my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. So what are you excited about And actually, before that, I'd like to understand what are some of the challenges you run into in working with these kids? Like, what would you say is the top three challenges that affect the ability of kids to break out of their current environment?
I just heard the speaker talk about this, and it hits me. But it's the idea of it's poverty of the mind, not poverty itself, but poverty of the mind. This belief that somehow I am less than, or I have less than, or I can't. And so it's a mindset piece, and this mindset piece is mostly developed by the systems that we have in place. Right?
Yeah.
It's these challenges that are really hard to battle. It's mental health, it's systemic inequities, it's racism. These big problems that are perpetuated in all of our systems that create poverty of the mind, especially for certain groups of people that are most pushed aside by the system. So it's a challenge, one, to change that mentality while the system doesn't actually change, right? So how do we support students in developing a belief in themselves and at the same time go to the system, which, believe it or not, are people. Like a lot of times we're like, oh, it's the system. Well, there's decision makers in the system.
Exactly.
And those are people. So going to the system and going to the people that are the decision makers and getting them to take an incrementally longer look at themselves and at the individuals across from them and start to make decisions that are more equitable for everybody in the system.
Or change the reading list. Something as simple as changing the reading list.
Yeah, I know, right? Like,
give that kid How to Win Friends and Influence People.
Yeah.
The E-Myth Revisit. Like, all the books that you see all these, like, coaches these days
100%.
promoting. Like,
Yeah.
let's get in the system earlier. You're reading it, 5 years after you graduate from college, and because you're miserable at your work and you want something better. So imagine if those books were introduced earlier.
Yeah, 100%. And those teachings, what if teachers read those books as well? So our teaching are the ways in which we approached education in itself changed. And the books thing also is important. Like, we have leaders and heroes that resemble all the students that are reading them and not just students that maybe sound like me or look like me as the heroes the whole time. Because we've learned a lot as a mentoring organization that students do benefit when they can see themselves and their leaders and their mentors and their teachers. It's not that I can't be an effective mentor. It's just that someone that has similar lived experience will also be a really effective mentor in ways that I can't be. That shows up in books as well.
Yeah.
So
we got mindset.
Yeah, so mindset's one for sure. I think mindset and system. So like those kind of go hand in hand. So mindset and system are probably two of the challenges. I mean, it all comes back to these like institutional systems, I think, for sure. But man, well, I'll just say I'll go to your world and talk about finances and financial literacy and just understanding how to navigate the system as it is without changing it even, but just as it is. With the resources that you have in order to build your resources and your wealth for you and your family. So I think finances is one, but then that also comes with like social capital. So how do I expand my community a little bit to see things that I see a perspective that I've never seen before? So I think just mobility in general and being able to have folks in your life that help you be a little bit more mobile, because a lot of these kids' networks are very small,
and so they don't have the same access that you might have.
Exactly.
Right?
So I think like we all of us that have access, it doesn't hurt us. So when we walk through one of those doorways to reach back and keep it open, it doesn't hurt us when more people are walking through. Like, how do we all develop that abundance mindset, right? Versus the pie is only this big, and if I'm sharing that pie, I'm not getting the whole pie. Rather than, no, the pie can get bigger and bigger if we actually believe it. But it it takes everybody believing in that system and supporting other people and believing in that idea, that abundance mindset.
Yeah, no, I totally agree, because even in my world, you see a bunch of like, this is mine.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, you're talking to those people, like,
I was just talking about this with our development director today. Like, we, in this city, even though we have so many resources, there's not a culture of philanthropy.
That's interesting, because you see a lot of fundraisers.
Yeah, you see a lot of fundraisers. People go, but
you think
these
they go
fundraisers,
just for
a lot of time, it's like
for the social media?
Not even social media, but also just, I'm going to show you how much money I have.
Yeah.
Rather than actually having a culture of wanting to give back. In some cases, I mean, I guess I've seen the whole spectrum, right? So I just met with a donor this week who is giving us the largest donation we've ever received in our history, and he's done it in a way that is so in line with our values and trusts us as an organization. Even though he's been so successful in business, he's not coming to us and say, here's how you should run your business.
Yeah.
He's going, I don't actually know how to run a nonprofit. I've never done that before, but I've done my due diligence to understand what you do and the connections that you've made. Let's do this. And I was like, that's so commendable of you. And he goes, no, I don't. It's not, because I've made so much to get to this point. I should have done this a lot earlier. And I could have also built this mentality into my kids who were born on second base, as he said. So really wealthy guy who's now figuring it out, and I appreciate it, but doesn't necessarily want to be commended, and is doing it in a really trust-based way with us. But there's not that culture. Like, he's the guy that now with one person, how can we get more folks like him? Because they all exist right here in our community. But in my 10 years of doing this is the first time I've met a guy with that much access and that much resources who's giving away money like this.
Yeah. And doesn't hurt him.
No.
Right.
Doesn't hurt him.
Best case scenario, it's a tax deduction.
Yeah. And he knows it. And he's also like, he also sees that part of it, and he owns that too. He goes, I also know that, when I give this out, it's going to help our business and it's going to help these things. And I want to acknowledge that. I'm not going to pretend that it's not.
Yeah.
Whereas we have a lot of the Seattle passive aggressive pretending that, like, no, let's get real. Like, this is going to go to your marketing, and that's fine. I'm okay if there's a business case for this.
Yeah.
As long as you also understand that it's making an impact, and we're not going to change the things that we do every day just because we're getting this money.
Yeah.
And I think that's part of the culture of philanthropy as well, which is, as a donor, I'm actually not the customer. The customer of a nonprofit are the students and families or clients that are being served. As a donor, I'm a supporter, and I'm a believer, and I'm a champion, but I'm not a customer.
Right.
And how do we change that mentality? Because when we're a customer, we want this type of service and this type of elegance.
Yeah.
But that actually hurts. That hurts the nonprofit. Whatever, If we spend more time servicing you, it takes away from the time that we have to service our clients.
Do you think that's an issue with, like, all those nonprofits where you see everybody wearing the same color for sports and like,
what do you mean?
Like the breast cancer or the cancer foundation?
Oh,
I'm like,
do I see it as a problem that they're wearing all the same color?
Yeah, because I feel like they raise so much money.
Oh,
and it's like still got a problem. And I've had friends that go through cancer. I'm like, well, I could have sworn this organization raised this much for that very purpose. You should be able to access some of that for medical help.
Yeah, I mean,
that's where I see is that
I'm biased. I'm a big fan of small, scrappy nonprofits because we're on the ground floor keeping the big nonprofits accountable. Because if you just have a big nonprofit that just is sitting back in their chair and bringing in the money because they got the brand name, are they actually changing with the times and still listening to the people that are being served? Or are they just perpetuating the status quo and doing the same thing over and over and over again? So I'm not saying all big nonprofits do that, but there's definitely some bigger machine nonprofits that aren't thinking as innovatively as they should and could be.
Right.
And I mean, the logic model of maybe a nonprofit that's in the business of preventing homelessness, if they're only putting a Band-Aid on the solution, it keeps them employed. So I'm really a fan of nonprofits that do the work to be more systemic and say, what's the root cause of this? And our job at the end of the day is actually to put ourselves out of business.
Yep. Yep.
Because as an organization that's trying to prevent homelessness, if homelessness is prevented, which I'm not naive that it probably won't happen in our lifetime, but that's what they should be working towards.
Mm-hmm.
Ultimately, put them out of business.
Yeah.
Right. But what's happening? What's happening? And we've had a really big challenge in our city in Seattle where organizations, and it's a big, complicated issue. So I'm not saying that I know how to do this by any means, but there's it's a conversation that needs to be had around: are we just putting a Band-Aid on a challenge in order to continue to keep things moving as they always have, or are we actually creating societal change?
Mm-hmm.
And we should be having those conversations as donors, as nonprofits, as everyday humans around a dinner table, because that's how change is going to happen.
Yeah,
continuing to bring those questions up.
Makes sense. So, what are you excited for this year?
Personally, we're having another kid.
Yeah,
so I have a 2.5-year-old at home, and my wife's pregnant with our nice boy or girl.
Play date, boy.
Oh really? Yeah. Oh, I love that.
You got a boy?
Yeah, little boy. Yeah, and he likes to wrestle.
Arts.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. No,
oh man. Yeah. And this next one's a girl.
Okay.
And no, I'm so excited. She is gonna humble me though.
Yeah.
I was like, if I had another boy, it's like I feel like I got this boy thing down. I'm a boy. Yeah. He's a boy.
You just let them wrestle.
So I don't know.
They're good.
The big man or woman upstairs decided that they did not want to give it, make it easy for me. And said, you know what? You're gonna have a girl, and she's gonna open your mind up a little bit bigger.
Yeah.
So I'm really excited. And if she's anything like my partner and like my wife, she's gonna run this world and run my world. So I'm excited about that. We have some new people on our Rainier Athletes team that we've grown a lot, and there's new people. And so I'm excited to see, can we as an organization continue to grow and maintain the culture and quality of our service that we've had up until now? Because as you grow, I think that's a big challenge of any organization. Can you maintain? Can you sustain? Can you get better even? And so I'm really excited. We have a dream team of people, as I was mentioning, and some of these new folks right away. I felt like we've had one person has joined us, has been with us for 2 months, and on paper she's young, but in the real world, her wisdom is beyond anything I've seen for someone her age, and just anyone. She's just just thinking so incredibly big picture and thoughtfully about the work we do, is already just making a difference. And then we have a development director who I was mentioning who is already coming in and challenging me. And when I was interviewing for development directors, I said I want a sparring partner. I don't want someone that's just going to say yes.
Right.
I need someone that's going to think differently and challenge me and push us. And she does it, and she does it with tough love, but she also does it with so much compassion. She's from Chicago. She kind of has that like spicy Chicago. But she also just has so much love and care for the work we're doing, and does it in the right way. So I'm excited. I'm excited about our team and what we can accomplish this year.
Awesome. So how can people find you and support your organization?
Rainier Athletes, rainierathletes.org. We have our event coming up April 27th. If you go to our website and click on events, you can see the event and register or contribute to we're doing a matching pool this year. So any donations that come in, we're going to use it as a match to get other people excited to donate. Mentor as well. I mean, in order to add more students, we need more people in the community that are willing to step across that line and be courageous. And when I say courageous, I don't mean you're doing something because it's easy. Like you're doing something because it's hard, and it's hard, and you're doing it anyway. It's someone maybe you've never met before, and a family you've never met before, and being open to that abundance mindset. Giving your time and your energy and your talents and your love. Mentors, money, partnerships. There's folks out there that feel like there's a good way to connect with our community of students or mentors, or sports league partners or activity partners. We're certainly open to that conversation.
I imagine you already have a lot of the sports activity and It
Yeah, we're always
sounds like
looking
you have
for
all
more.
the major
Yeah, so we have
organizations.
so for the professional sports, but for our
Mhm.
students themselves, we're really working on expanding into the arts and engineering. So like
Okay.
we say our Rainier athletes aren't just athletes; they're artists and engineers
Mhm.
and more. So just not a ton on the east side, but organizations that are even just upstarting that do STEM or engineering
Mhm.
for youth and can provide support for students that might not typically have access to these type of activities. And same with the arts, music, dance,
Mhm.
theater. Love to hear from those folks as well.
Okay.
Financial literacy.
Okay, I could probably.
Yeah, you know a guy?
Yeah, might know a guy.
Okay, cool. Yeah, that'd be helpful as well.
Well, Jesse, thanks for coming on the show.
Yeah, Tony, it was fun.
Appreciate it.
Thanks for your questions.
I love your story, man. That's
Thanks.
awesome thing you're doing.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks for finding me in the crowd and
Yeah.
helping to elevate the work we're doing.
Yeah.
It means a lot.
Sure.
Awesome.
Thank you for tuning into the show. If you found value in what our guests shared and what we share on the show, please feel free to share with your friends and family. We'd love to see you back here. Thank you again. And you can find us on pretty much every social media channel, YouTube, iTunes, and Spotify as well. Thank you for watching. Thank you for tuning in. Step into the unscripted arena.